You are Ananda. In India, we say that everybody is Satchidananda. Existence, consciousness, bliss. The Ananda is translated as bliss, which I guess better than joy. That is your real nature. That is who you really are. And the reason that you are not experiencing it is because you've been very busy bottling it up. In other words, as I have explained in other talks, some of which I've given at Mind Valley, you have spent your entire life learning to be unhappy. And the way you learn to be unhappy is there is a particular model that you believe very strongly, and that model is flat out false. That model is, if this happens, then I will be happy. If I get a great deal of money, I can go to exotic places on vacation and I can be happy. If I am in a relationship, if I find a partner, I can have great sex and then I can be happy. Always, if this happens, I will be happy. If my company had $10 million in revenue, I'll be happy. No, I made a mistake. If it had $100 million, I'll be happy. No, I was still in error. I got to get to $1 billion before I'll be happy. We're always modifying our situation, saying, if this happens, then I will be happy. And no matter how many times in your own life you've seen that something you desperately wanted comes to you and you're thrilled for a day, a week, and then it simply becomes part of the background of your life and you move on, and now you need something else. But the model is there. If this happens, I will be happy. If I get married, I will be happy. I now recognize I married the wrong person, so I have to extricate myself from it with as little damage as possible, marry the right person, and then I'll be happy. We always think we put the wrong thing on the if side of the equation. We never examine the equation itself because it is the equation that is faulty. When we recognize that it is the equation that is faulty, not the mistake of putting the wrong thing on one side of the equation, but the equation itself is faulty, once we clearly recognize that, then we can start dropping it. And as we start dropping it, the happiness, joy, Ananda that is bottled up inside us will come out, because we don't need things to be in a particular manner in order for us to be happy. And let me give you an example of that. One of the people who's had a profound influence on my life is Father Anthony de Mello. He was a Jesuit priest. He passed away, a couple of decades ago. But I really believe he was an enlightened being, and he really understood life and our journey in life. And he said, one of the happiest persons I knew was a pedicab driver in Calcutta. Now, there are pedicabs in Calcutta, and pedicabs are a little bit like rickshaws, except there is no mechanism. There's a human being who pulls. And people sit in the pedicab, and the pedicab driver takes them to their destination. Very, very onerous work, particularly if you have to take a fat tourist up a steep hill, and barely made any money to survive. And he had tuberculosis, so he was dying. And he was so poor, he had actually sold his body. There were people who go around and pay you money. So when you die, they take your body and then they sell it to hospitals and medical schools for dissection purposes.
Wow.
So he had actually sold his body. So that was the state he was in, and Father de Mello said, and he was one of the happiest, most fulfilled individuals I have ever ran across. So the illusion we have...
How was this pedicab driver living in Ananda, despite not having anything?
And Ananda was an internal state that you occupy. And I'm going to tell you another story which will bring this down. There is a wonderful book, it's a spiritual classic, called The Way of a Pilgrim. Nobody knows who the pilgrim was. He was Russian. He roamed around Siberia in the late 19th century. The only thing he had was a torn woolen coat, and a copy of the Bible. So if you're roaming around Siberia in a torn woolen coat, you're not in a particularly good place. He had a dislocated shoulder and no doctor to heal him, so he lived with the pain. But despite all of that, he was in a state of such exaltation that you can only marvel. His manuscript was discovered in the early 20th century, translated, and instantly became a classic. And he talks about how there was such joy in his life that nothing mattered. He said he walked 40, 50 miles a day, and he said, if there was pain in my foot, I prayed harder and soon the pain disappeared. If I was hungry, I redoubled my effort and soon the hunger vanished. And there was such unutterable joy in my life that I could not imagine how anyone could be happier. I was not even walking, I was floating. And that description is so vivid that just reading that takes the reader to a different level. That is Ananda, that is divine fervor.